Fish almost never die of mysterious causes. They die of a short list of specific, identifiable, preventable events. And I'm going to give you the 5 that account for the overwhelming majority of losses in home aquariums. 4 of them cost nothing at all. The 5th costs about $20 once. And there is a reason none of them were mentioned to you at the counter when you bought your first fish, which is that every single one of these 5 is a form of waiting, and nothing on this list can be put in a bag and sold to you today. But the list is not the interesting part of this video. The interesting part is what is actually happening inside a fish in the days before it dies, because it is not what most people picture. And once you understand it, the 5 things on this list stop looking like separate tips and start looking like one problem with 5 entrances. Here's the sequence almost everybody in this hobby has been through at least once. You buy fish on a Saturday, you float the bag for 15 minutes because that is what you were told to do, then tip it into the tank. The fish look fine. Monday they still look fine. Wednesday one is hanging near the surface or sitting on the bottom with its fins clamped tight against its body. Thursday it has a white patch or a frayed fin, or it is simply gone. You test the water and every reading is where it should be, which is the most frustrating part, because the numbers are telling you nothing is wrong. So you treat the tank for something, and the treatment either works or it does not, and either way another fish goes the same way a month later. Eventually, you decide the store sells weak fish, or that you have bad luck, or that this particular species is delicate, and none of those explanations is correct. Put a figure on a year of that. Replacement fish, for somebody losing them, steadily run $60 to $200 annually. Medications are $15 to $30 a bottle and get bought reactively, so call it another $40 to $80. Water conditioners, stress coat products, and pH adjusters add $30 to $60 more. So a hobbyist quietly running this pattern is spending somewhere between $130 and $340 a year, and the great majority of that is spent responding to deaths rather than preventing them. 4 of the 5 items in this video are free, and the 5th is a one-time purchase of about $20. Now, the reason nobody tells you, and it is not the usual explanation, there is no villain product here, because there is no product at all. The economics work in a subtler way. A retail transaction is optimized for completion, meaning the customer arrives, buys, and leaves, with everything in one visit. Every item on this list obstructs that. Proper acclimation takes an hour, so it is faster to say, float the bag for 15 minutes. Quarantine means the fish you are selling today cannot go in the display tank for a month, which is a strange thing to say to somebody standing at your till with their wallet out. Stocking slowly means selling 3 fish today instead of 12. Every correct answer on this list is a delay, and delay is the one thing a point of sale cannot accommodate. Layer on top of that the fact that a dead fish produces a returning customer, which is not an accusation of deliberate malice against anybody at any counter, simply an observation about which outcomes a business is structurally insulated from. That is not a scandal, and almost every consumer category on earth is shaped by the same pressures. What matters is that the advice you received was shaped by the length of a transaction rather than by the biology of an animal. There is one more structural detail worth knowing, because it explains why the advice is so consistent across shops. Almost nobody working behind that counter was trained in fish husbandry. They were trained on the till, on stock rotation, and on the store handbook. And the acclimation advice in that handbook was written to be delivered in one sentence to a customer who's already holding a bag. 15 minutes floating is not what somebody believes to be optimal. It is what fits in a sentence. The person telling you is passing on what they were given, exactly as it was given to them. And they have no more reason to doubt it than you did. Before I get into the 5, one thing worth saying now. These are the 5 largest preventable causes, and they sit on top of a foundation of filtration, stocking, and feeding that has to be right underneath them. I have put the complete version together in one place as a full aquarium playbook, covering how every layer supports the others. The link is in the description and in the top pinned comment, and if the code is on your screen right now, you can scan it and go straight there. Now here's what is actually happening in a fish in the days before it dies, because it explains why all 5 of these things matter and why your test kit shows nothing. Fish have a stress response much like ours, and its central component is the release of cortisol into the bloodstream. In an acute situation, that is useful because it mobilizes energy for escape. Sustained, it is destructive, and it does two things in particular. It suppresses immune function, which means a fish carrying a stress load stops being able to fight off organisms it would normally shrug off. And every aquarium contains those organisms permanently. And it disrupts osmoregulation, which is the constant work a freshwater fish does to hold its internal salt balance against water that is always trying to flood into it through the gills and skin. A stressed fish leaks ions, works harder to maintain balance, and spends energy it should be spending on growth and immunity. That is why the fish that dies on Thursday looked fine on Monday. It was not healthy on Monday and then attacked on Wednesday. It was carrying a stress load from Saturday. Its immune function was falling the entire time, and something ordinary got through on Wednesday because the defenses were down. And it is why your test kit reads clean. A test kit measures the water. It does not measure the animal. There is no reading for a fish that has spent 4 days failing to recover from something that happened in a plastic bag. If you have ever added a new fish and watched it sit motionless in a corner for 2 or 3 days with its colors washed out and its fins held tight against its body, and then seen it gradually come out and start behaving normally, you have watched that entire process run its course successfully. That washed out, clamped, motionless fish was not being shy. It was a fish with elevated cortisol, diverting everything it had towards simply staying in balance. The ones that recover are the ones that got through that window before anything found them. The ones that die in the first fortnight are the same fish that did not. And the difference between the two outcomes is very often decided in the first hour, before the fish ever entered your tank. The first thing is how you put a fish into your tank, and the standard advice is not merely incomplete, it is dangerous for a reason almost nobody knows. Floating the bag equalizes temperature, which is real and worth doing. But temperature is the smallest of the problems. Here is the one that kills. During transport, the fish in that bag produces ammonia, and the water in the bag also accumulates carbon dioxide from its respiration. Dissolved carbon dioxide makes water more acidic, so the pH inside a transport bag falls steadily over the journey. At low pH, ammonia exists almost entirely as ammonium, which is comparatively harmless, so the fish sits in that bag surrounded by a large quantity of nitrogen that is not hurting it. Then you open the bag. Carbon dioxide escapes into the air. Within minutes, the pH climbs back up, and that ammonium converts into free ammonia, which is the toxic form. A fish that was safe inside a closed bag can be sitting in genuinely dangerous water within 5 or 10 minutes of that bag being open. So do it properly, and it takes about an hour of doing nothing. Float the sealed bag for 15 minutes for temperature, then open it, and rather than letting it sit, immediately begin adding tank water. The cleanest method is to pour the bag and fish into a clean bucket and run a length of airline tubing from your tank, siphoning water into the bucket at a slow drip, roughly 2 to 4 drips per second, tying a loose knot in the tubing to control it. Let that run until the volume in the bucket has roughly tripled, which takes 45 minutes to an hour. Then net the fish out and place it in the tank and discard the bucket water rather than pouring it in. That water contains the ammonia and whatever came with it from the shop, and there is no reason for any of it to enter your aquarium. The second thing is quarantine, and it is the single highest impact item on this list. Almost all disease in home aquariums is introduced rather than spontaneous. The pathogens that kill aquarium fish do not appear from nowhere. They arrive attached to or inside a new animal, and frequently that animal shows no visible sign of carrying them, because a fish with a functioning immune system can hold a low-level infection indefinitely without symptoms. Then it goes through capture, bagging, transport, and introduction. Its cortisol rises, its immunity falls, and the infection it was suppressing blooms. Now it is in your display tank, with all your other fish. There is a structural reason this matters more than people assume. Most retail fish systems are centrally filtered, meaning a whole wall of tanks shares one sump and one body of water. That is efficient and it is normal, and it also means that a pathogen arriving in any single shipment is circulated to every tank on that system within hours. The healthy-looking fish in the tank at the far end shared water with the sick shipment that arrived on Tuesday. Quarantine is a separate small tank, a sponge filter seated from your main tank, a heater, and a lid, which is where that $20 goes if you do not already own the parts. 4 weeks is the standard period, because it is long enough for most common infections to become visible. Observe, do not medicate unless you see something specific. And feed well, because a quarantine tank is also where a starved shopfish gets its condition back before it has to compete for food. The tank itself does not need to be attractive or planted, and a bare bottom is preferable because it makes it obvious what is happening with waste and with the fish. When the 4 weeks are up, the sponge filter goes back into your main tank to stay charged and ready for the next time, which means the setup costs you $20 once rather than every occasion. That is 2 of the 5, and this is the point where the order and the setup start to matter more than the individual items. Running quarantine badly is worse than not running it, and the water parameter items coming up interact with everything else in your tank. The full playbook covers the setup and the sequence in full detail. The link is in the description and the top pinned comment, or scan the code on your screen, and it will take you there directly. The third thing is to stop chasing pH, and this one kills more fish than the problem it is meant to solve. Somebody reads that their species prefers a pH of 6.5, tests their tap water at 7.5, and buys a bottle of pH adjuster. They dose it, the pH drops, and within a day or two it drifts back up, because tap water contains carbonate hardness that resists change and pulls the value back. So they dose again. Now the tank is oscillating, and oscillation is far more damaging than any stable value in the normal range. A fish adjusts its physiology to the water it lives in, and that adjustment takes days. A value that moves every few days means an animal permanently mid-adjustment and never settled. The overwhelming majority of aquarium fish available today are commercially bred, frequently for many generations, in whatever water the farm had, and they are far more tolerant of an unusual stable value than of a correct value that keeps moving. Test your tap water once, learn what it is, and choose fish that suit it. That is free, permanent, and it removes an entire category of product from your life. The fourth thing is the one that catches out people who are trying to do the right thing, and it has a name in the hobby. Old tank syndrome. A tank goes neglected for months. Water changes get skipped. Nitrate climbs steadily, and because carbonate hardness is consumed over time by the biological filter, the pH slowly drifts downward. The fish, crucially, adapt to that. They are living in poor water, but they are acclimatized to it. Then the owner has a burst of conscience, sees a nitrate reading of well over 100, and does a very large water change to fix it. Fresh tap water arrives with high pH, high hardness, and nothing else in it, and the entire chemistry of the tank moves in one afternoon. Fish that survived months of neglect die within a day of the correction. If you are looking at a badly neglected tank, do not rescue it in one go. Change 10 to 15% of the volume, wait 2 days, and repeat, for as long as it takes to bring the numbers down gradually. The neglect took months to build. The correction is allowed to take weeks. The fifth thing is a lid, and it is on this list because jumping is one of the most common causes of death in home aquariums and one of the least discussed. Fish are not jumping out of stupidity. In the wild, it is a real behavior used to escape predators, to move between pools, and across obstacles. And in a glass box, the same instinct fires under a startle. During a chase, or when water quality deteriorates and the animal attempts to leave. Some species do it constantly, and those are frequently the ones sold as beginner fish, including danios, hatchetfish, killifish, most loaches, and many resboras. A glass lid or a fitted mesh screen top costs between $15 and $30, closes the problem permanently, and has the useful side effect of slowing evaporation and holding heat. Pay attention to the gaps as well, because the hole cut for a filter or a heater cable is exactly the size a small fish needs. Any offcut of mesh or a piece of plastic will close it. If you are reading all of this with a tank that already has a problem in it, do not attempt all 5 at once this weekend. Start with the lid, because it takes 10 minutes and prevents an entire category of loss immediately. Set up the quarantine tank next, before your next fish purchase, rather than after. Then correct your water gradually using the 4th item. Buying fish while any of this is unresolved is the one thing to avoid, because every new arrival raises the load on a system that is not yet stable. I want to be straightforward about the limitations, because accurate information is worth more than a clean sales pitch. The first is that this list is about preventable deaths, and not every death is preventable. Fish arrive with congenital problems. Older fish reach the end of a normal lifespan, and some individuals simply do not thrive for reasons nobody can identify. If you lose one fish out of a group and the rest are thriving over months, that is not necessarily a system failure. The second is that these 5 sit on top of a foundation and do not substitute for it. Correct filtration Sensible stocking and disciplined feeding are underneath all of this, and no acclimation procedure saves a fish going into an overstocked tank. The third is that I am describing general aquarium practice rather than veterinary diagnosis. If you have an active outbreak with visible symptoms, identifying the specific organism matters, and it is a different subject to this one. Now, here's the mistake that undoes every item on this list, and it is the same mistake every time. Impatience. Look at the 5 things again and notice what they have in common. Acclimation is an hour of waiting. Quarantine is a month of waiting. Refusing to chase pH is waiting instead of dosing. Correcting a neglected tank slowly is weeks of waiting instead of one decisive afternoon. And the lid is the only one that is not waiting, which is precisely why it is the one almost everybody manages. Every other item on this list asks you to do nothing when doing something feels better, and doing something is what the shelf, the counter, and your own instincts all push you toward. The entire skill in this hobby, once the equipment is right, is the ability to leave things alone on purpose. None of this is specialist knowledge, and none of it is in dispute. It is standard operating procedure everywhere that losing fish is a financial event rather than a disappointment. Public aquariums quarantine new arrivals for 30 to 60 days as a matter of written policy. Commercial aquaculture drip acclimates stock as routine, because a farm cannot absorb the losses that a hobbyist absorbs quietly. Those protocols exist, they are written down, they are taught, and every one of them is built around delay. The knowledge was never hidden and never complicated. It simply lives in professional practice, where the cost of skipping it appears on a balance sheet, rather than at a retail counter where the cost of skipping it appears in your tank a week later. If you want the complete system rather than just these 5, the full aquarium playbook covers the quarantine setup and protocol, the acclimation procedure step by step, the stocking order and bioload limits, and the filtration and feeding decisions that everything else rests on. It is all in one place, in the order you actually need it. The link is in the description and in the top pinned comment, and you can scan the code on your screen to go straight to it. And if this changed how you think about that Saturday trip to the fish store,